Hello, everybody. It's Nika Smith here, along with Bernice Alexander Bennett and Shannon Christmas. We are your instructors for the 2017 Midwestern African American Genealogy Institute DNA track. And we are so glad that you all could take the time to join us for tonight's quick chat just about some housekeeping things and just to get you well prepared for the sessions that are getting ready to come up very quickly. You may not realize that MAAGI will be here any second and it's going to go by in a whirlwind. And so we want to make sure that you all are on the same page, that you know where we're going, as a cohesive unit, that you know who your instructors are, and that you have the opportunity to ask any questions that you need to ask. So before we jump in with introductions and such, I'm just going to go ahead and go over the agenda as sent out by Miss Bernice. So let me go ahead and get this screen together so you all can see this. You should have received this information in your email inbox. If you have not received it, just make sure that you contact Miss Bernice, me, or almost said Shelly, Shannon, and let either one of us know that you've been getting emails, so you don't know what's expected of you or what's going on with that. So be sure to make sure that you do that if you haven't been getting emails. So tonight's agenda, first, of course, we're going to do a welcome. So welcome, faculty introductions. Then we're going to go into participant introductions and expectations, the names, tests taken, and expectations of the DNA track. The third piece we're going to cover is an informal survey, self-identified beginner, intermediate, and advanced analysis in DNA. Fourth, we're going to discuss a overview of the DNA track schedule, followed by what should you bring to Fort Wayne. We're going to talk about that. The sixth piece is it's surrounding what you must do now in terms of your homework before you actually get to MAAGI. And then the last piece will be your questions. And so I think the dialogue from the students is probably going to be fairly limited tonight. We only have one person who has logged in a speaking role, but they also do not have, it doesn't appear that they have audio capabilities at this point. So you can go ahead and throw your comments into the chat area and we'll just go ahead and read them as we go through everything. So let me go ahead and stop presenting, and Miss Bernice can introduce herself.
Yes, hi, I'm Bernice Bennett, and this is my second year with the DNA track. We had a lot of fun last year, and a lot of the things I focus on, we'll talk about standards and ethics and the emotional side of DNA, and also work with you in small groups, because that's what we hope you will do, a lot of work. But we'll talk more about that later. But welcome, everybody.
Great. And then we also have Shannon Christmas, who is another instructor. We can't hear you, Shannon.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself. While he gets his settings together, I just want to send a shout out to Diane Sheldon, who's in the chat room, along with Eileen Sims and Cheryl Varner, who are all in the chat room. And there's also 8 other viewers who are watching. So that's roughly a little bit more than half of the people who are going to be in the DNA track. As you all are well aware, we actually shut off registration for this track. So there were a couple folks who were able to slide on in after the fact because we had some cancellations. So consider yourself lucky. I'm Nika Smith. I am one of your instructors. I'm going to be focusing on using different tools that we use for genetic genealogy. I'll be talking about a case study involving my family, also there to help facilitate small groups, and any other thing revolving around DNA. I'll probably have my camera that weekend. I usually do. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades here. Shannon, do you want to try again to see if your audio comes out all right?
Yes.
All right. Can you angle your camera down a little bit so we can see you better? There you go.
Okay, great. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I am Shannon Christmas. I'm another one of your instructors for Track 2. Look forward to seeing you all in Fort Wayne in just a few short days.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this information that was presented on the survey. If you haven't received the survey to provide us with your, name, experience level, all that kind of stuff, that's something that definitely you need to get completed before MAAGI begins, just so we have an idea and that we can make sure that we tailor everything towards your specific needs as a student coming to MAAGI. The difference between MAAGI and any other gathering of genealogists is that this is an institute. This is not a conference where we sit and bark at you for however many hours and you don't get to actually put anything into practice. There's going to be homework, there's going to be exercises, all that kind of stuff. So that's something just to keep in mind. So Shannon, did you want to touch a little bit briefly on I guess the bulk results of the informal survey that took place?
Before Shannon talks, let's have them introduce themselves.
Sure.
And then tell us what tests they've taken and then their expectations. And then we'll go into the results of the survey. Okay. So why don't you all, I guess they can just type it in there.
Yeah, in the chat room. I put the request in there as well so that they can fill that out. So I guess we can do that. I guess we can tell a little bit about ourselves. I'm a professional genealogist. I focus on, of course, traditional genealogy, African-American genealogy, and DNA. I host a show called Black ProGen Live that takes place a couple times a month here on YouTube. In terms of DNA tests, I've taken them with Family Tree DNA, Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and I'm also uploaded to GEDmatch. I monitor and manage pretty much 40 plus DNA kits for members of my family. So I'm one of the people that has sort of like a project that happens with my family's DNA. Eileen Sims is introducing herself. She says that she has tested on Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, and recently 23andMe.
That's wonderful. Well, while we're waiting for others to type in, I have tested with Family Tree DNA. I've done the mitochondrial DNA as well as the autosomal with Family Tree DNA, and I've had my brother test with the Y. I have tested with Ancestry and 23andMe, and I manage 4 kits. And I'm doing this all day long. I'm constantly, I think my life revolves around my genealogy and my DNA.
Yes, ma'am. Eileen says she considers herself a intermediate researcher, but beginner DNA. Cheryl Varner has also weighed in. She says she's tested with 23andMe. I think she means, she says African DNA. So maybe you think it might be African ancestry. I'm not sure. And she says she's tested her sister, a niece, and a first cousin. She considers herself an intermediate student.
Okay. And Cheryl, is this intermediate with genealogy or intermediate with DNA? We're just waiting for the response. Okay, Shannon, are you still on to tell them about where you've tested?
Absolutely. I have tested at several different places since 2010. 23andMe, Family Tree DNA's Family Finder, as well as the Y-DNA 37 and 67 test, as well as at Ancestry DNA and recently Living DNA. I'm also on MyHeritage, GEDmatch, and DNA Land.
So, Shannon, you're all over the place.
Yeah, I was gonna say his genetic mark is everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. And in terms of number of kits I manage, I have lost count. But I'm guessing it's probably between 30 to 40.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. So
wow.
we've got feedback. Cheryl says she considers herself intermediate genealogy and advanced beginner in DNA. She says she'll write it like that.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yes. All right. Well, those are the only, between Diane, Cheryl, and Eileen, those are the only three people that are in the chat room. If you're watching live and you're using the YouTube app on your phone or your mobile device, whether it's iPad, whatever, there is a live chat at the bottom of the screen if you're watching this live, and you could participate and, provide your feedback in that live chat. Also, we sent out the link to actually join in a speaking role. So be sure to check your email inbox or the email that you provided when you registered for MAAGI to be able to do that as well. Okay, and so Cheryl said she followed up and said she tested with, I think it is African ancestry that Skip Gates hosted some years ago. So it is, she did do an African ancestry test as well. Okay. All right, let's see. Moving forward, I guess in the agenda for the evening, I'll go ahead and put up the schedule, Bernice.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to present to everyone, so then that way everyone can see.
Right.
All right.
Okay, everyone. First of all, we are looking forward to seeing all of you in just week after next. And so our registration is actually on Monday. However, you will receive an email also asking if you would be interested in going to the African American Museum in Fort Wayne. So look for information about signing in when you come in. We're going to have a meet and greet, and that's when you will get your packets. All of this is at the Allen County Public Library. Now, we start bright and early on Tuesday morning. And we will be on the second floor in the Allen County Public Library. And we're starting off by really trying to make sure that everybody is on the same page. This is one of the reasons that we have recommended that you purchase this book. Well, really, we required it. And also this book. So looking at the agenda.
Can you hold those up one more time? Because we
Sure.
were presenting to everyone, just so everyone can see. The books that she has there are Genetic Genealogy, and you can finish the title.
Okay, Genetic Genealogy in Practice by Blaine Bettinger and Debbie Parker Wayne. And there's another book, and this is The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. Okay, so these are the two books that we've been talking about for the last 3 months that we would like you all to have read.
Right.
Okay, so we will begin at 8:30 in the morning, and from 8:30 to 10, we're going to have a discussion on the beginner's genetic genealogy. And so we're hoping that this is the session to kind of get everyone on the same page. And Shannon is going to conduct that session, and then you will have the two other instructors. We will be there. Then moving right along, we're going to take a quick break and then go right into strategies for using autosomal DNA. Now, one of the things that you will find is that we have built in a lot of practice time, because, you know, you're coming to an institute to learn new skills, new strategies. You're not coming there to hear us talk. And so as adult learners, we're going to put you in the adult learning mode of working with each other in small groups. Then we're going to move on to later on that afternoon on Monday, focusing on third-party tools. And some of you have even sent messages saying you wanted to know more about the third-party tools. And so we're going to talk about that. But once again, it's also small group work. So you will have an opportunity to see how to use those tools and to practice and practice and practice. Now, one of the things I want to point out to all of you, it's really good to understand the science of DNA, but it's even more important to understand that you have to know your genealogy. And so we will constantly reinforce over and over again what your knowledge of your genealogy will do to advance your knowledge of the science of DNA. We're putting them both together. Shannon, you have anything you want to say about that?
I think that it's important that everyone who is coming as a student have their family tree ready to go when they get there, as far back as you can possibly trace it, using the resources you have available. A family tree is very much like a map when it comes to DNA. If you start a DNA test without a family tree, it's like landing on a planet and not really knowing where to go. So be ready with your family tree. That's pretty much all I can add to that at this point.
I would also just chime in. I think that Shannon's point is exactly correct. Something else that I would also add is to, exhaust all of your resources and be very, very, specific when you're developing your case study or when you send your case study over so that you can focus while you're there. Sometimes, and we actually talked about this last night, on Black Pro Gen Live, someone said, well, should I focus on all the lines of my family or should I only focus on one? I suggest working one line of your family through your case study and then taking that experience back home with you versus trying to figure out answers to 7 different questions while you're there. And I think it'll emerge, for you as you start to look at your tree, which lines you want to focus on or pay more attention to and apply the strategies when it comes to MAAGI and what you pick up.
Right. Because you're at the Allen County Public Library, you will have access to just about every resource you need to help you with your genealogy that will help you with your understand your DNA. And the library is open until 9 o'clock at night. So we will see you after we finish the instructions. You still have time to do as much research as you can. On the next day, which is Tuesday, we're going to focus on privacy, ethics, and standards and talk about just what does it mean to find, quote, a family secret? What do you do with that? When you talk about privacy, how do you handle certain types of information? When you talk about standards, whose standards are we talking about? Who provided these standards? And it'll give us an opportunity to just talk back and forth. This is going to be a group discussion. So after we do that, then we'll also get into small groups. We take a break and then back to Shannon with genetic genealogy planning. Shannon, you want to say something about this?
Yes, the genetic genealogy planning course really focuses on thinking about how you are going to use the resources, the tools, in a strategic way to tackle a specific genetic genealogy problem. So this is one of those things where you already have heard a lot about what's out there. Now you have to figure out how are you going to use it to deal with your specific situation. What's the best way to use it? Who's the best person or people to test? Those are the types of questions that will drive that particular session.
And then we will have Nika coming back on, and Nika is going to share with us a case study. You want to say a little bit about from widows to slave sisters to DNA?
Yeah, so this particular session is focused on trying to figure out, those unknown ancestors that we may have, and how you do that when combing through your DNA results and you are dealing with folks that are formerly enslaved and you may not have very much to go on, how you can hone in on your DNA matches to determine relationships with the information that your DNA cousins have provided, along with the maybe limited information that you may have, from your particular DNA testing.
Right. And then again, small group discussion, small group work. Then on Thursday, as you can see, we're doing concepts practice. We're moving into connecting with your DNA matches. And that's bright and early at 8:30 in the morning, and Shannon will be leading this. And we'll be talking about some small group work. DNA problem solving. After all, that's why you're in this session. So that's what we will be doing, DNA problem solving. Shannon, you want to say a little bit more about this?
Yes, the DNA problem solving and connecting with DNA matches go hand in hand, in the sense that you have to think about DNA matches as data points. Each of these people and the DNA that they share with you are windows into your ancestry. And so you can't really do this without your matches. So this will really focus on ways to communicate with your matches, get them to work with you in a collaborative way to break down some brick walls.
Right. And those brick walls can be broken down, but you do have to look at various strategies to do that. And Shannon is very good at helping you understand how you can use some of these strategies. Then we move on to Finding John Lee. And this is Nika. Nika, you want to say a little bit more about Finding John Lee?
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite presentations to do right now, because it really takes you through the entire process of what I discovered using traditional genealogy methods, how I used an exhaustive search, how I held on to the information that I had for years until one day the right DNA match fell into my lap, and how I was able to use the tools that we'll be teaching you to determine the relation of the relation on my side of the family that this particular cousin matched, and how it was able to get me back 3 or 4 generations in my family. And it was just merely based on DNA that led to the discovery. So it literally is a point A to point Z on how this whole process is done.
Right. And then there's a discussion after lunch, and it will talk about management, DNA, and this is again a session, no, excuse me, it's not after lunch, it's before lunch, and it's the DNA Family Project, Management and Use. And this is also by Nika Smith.
Yeah, so this is in a sense sort of similar to what Shannon is going to be presenting in terms of trying to, determine who the right people are to test. How do you organize the information for 40 different people? If you've got that number of family members tested, how can you then make new discoveries based on those relationships, developing a plan that you can take with you after the session is over or after the institute is over? All of that stuff is going to be covered during this session.
Okay, we have 2 individuals that are saying they're having trouble typing into the live stream, Karen Williams and Janet. And Janet just wanted us to know that she's taken African Ancestry, 23andMe. She's uploaded to GEDmatch, and Karen has done the same. And Janet also has living DNA. So,
and Mike, I'm sorry, I was going to add, Michael Henderson has joined us, and Daphne Kennedy Johnson has joined us. She says that she Daphne says that she is intermediate and that she's tested with Ancestry, 23andMe, and Family Tree DNA. Michael joined, and he said he's tested both parents with Family Finder and mtDNA, Y-DNA. He's tested his mother-in-law as well. He's Family Finder, mtDNA full sequence on Family Tree DNA, and he considers himself, of course he is, an advanced genealogy researcher, beginner to intermediate for DNA.
Okay, great. It's great that we have I think we have everybody now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. We've got 12 live viewers. So, you know, there's a couple, I think there's a couple folks who were missing, which is great. That means everyone's going to get the content. I think the last thing we were on for the schedule was the last session on day 3, which was a capstone.
And that's the capstone. You want to say something about that, Shannon?
Yes, the capstone involves taking everything that we've learned to work on a project. If you want it to be your specific case study, you can certainly advocate for that. Whatever the case is, I guess this is probably the best time to remind you to make sure that your case study is submitted to us with as much detail as possible so that we can make arrangements to integrate it into the various courses.
Okay, any questions about the schedule? And then we will have a full MAAGI wrap up on Thursday. The last session will be a MAAGI wrap up where everyone will receive a certificate of participation. I also did mention that last year we went for a luncheon on Wednesday. And this was at a soul food restaurant, and it's optional. However, you are all invited to attend this luncheon. It's $14, but we do need to know if you are interested. That's all you have to do is drop me an email so that I can let the planners be aware of the fact that we'll have you attending the luncheon, okay?
All right, so moving forward in the agenda, we're going to talk about briefly what to bring to Fort Wayne. I'll go ahead and share my screen for that. So just off the top, both textbooks that Bernice referenced, which are the DNA Guide to DNA, Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing, as well as a genetic genealogy book that Blaine Bettinger has written. We definitely think you should bring both of those. A laptop computer or a tablet device, but I highly suggest bringing a laptop computer. Your family tree, whether it is online or not, I would suggest, even if you don't want to share your tree online publicly, you know, you have a private tree, you have something to start out with. As Shannon already alluded to, you know, this whole process, you're at a standstill if you don't have a tree or something to work with before you get there. So, you know, in addition to reading the books, really put the time into researching your tree and getting the best information and the confirmed information. Because the thing that I would hate for you to do is you're going to start getting in small groups and people are going to start asking questions. And if the information isn't clear, they're going to keep asking you the same question over and over and over and over again. So the information becomes clear, and it might irritate you because we're all very emotional and tied to our research. I'm telling the truth, right? Like we're all emotional and we're all very tied to our research. And so you may have seen the same thing over and over again, but you know, I keep going back to last night. Someone mentioned that they didn't figure that their grandfather, there was no way their grandfather could be a child, you know, could have a child the age of the person they found, because the grandfather would have been 5 years old. You know, until someone else came in and said, oh, there's no way this is right. So do your best to try to, you know, do your exhaustive search and to make sure you check, you know, and triple check all of your facts that you have for your folks that you're presenting for your case study. The last thing we have on this list, at least, you know, until this discussion now, is to bring a sweater or a light jacket. I am always freezing. So this is just me. They don't keep it like Antarctic in in the conference rooms, but I always have a sweater on. A hoodie is great, something that you can just keep with you in the session. So I would highly suggest that. Is there anything else you all can think of?
Well, yes, some people may need to bring extra extension cords. We're going to have a lot of people with computers, and we may not have as many outlets as we would like. So put in an extra extension cord in there to help somebody else, and as well as yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, and Diane, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shannon. Diane Sheldon just asked, are you looking for a full pedigree tree or just a basic family tree? And I would say this really all depends on what your case study is going to be about. It needs to be, you need to have as developed as a tree as you possibly can for that particular line of your family.
Okay. Well, I would just add a few things, or rather clarify a few things. When we say bring both of the textbooks, that also means you should have read both of the textbooks before you actually arrive. And you should definitely bring a laptop computer. I know that people love tablets, but they don't often work as well for genetic genealogy, especially for this type of training where you are dealing with spreadsheets. Tablets and spreadsheets, in my experience, has been not so good. Your family tree, I think that everyone needs to know that autosomal DNA covers everything in your family tree. And so if you are looking to deal with autosomal DNA, it's a good idea to have as complete a family tree as possible, because you never know how the different pieces fit when you're dealing with the DNA. And in terms of dress, yes, a light jacket is a fantastic accessory, and you might find
Some
that you
people
need
even bring coats.
Okay, because I'm always cold.
Okay. But I think that is pretty much the long and the short of what to bring in. Maybe a few small snacks if you get a little hungry. You need to eat a little something on break, some cherries or some small fruit.
If they'll let them cross state lines. It looks
Yeah.
like Yvette joined us, and you didn't provide your genealogical skill level and your DNA skill level and what DNA tests you've taken.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay. My DNA level is probably beginner. And I've done family tree DNA, ancestry, and 23andMe. And then, of course, the GED match. I put that in GED match. And then I would say my genealogy level is probably intermediate, with some advanced, but mainly intermediate.
Okay.
Is that it?
For now.
Okay.
Okay. And then Shannon is going to go over what you must do now.
Yes, yes. So, number one, submit your case study. Now, I know that we have received, at this point, 4 case studies from 3 different people.
Mm-hmm.
We need more. So when you submit your case study, once again, please make sure you provide as much information and explain in as much detail as possible what the situation is, what the research question is, and everything that is involved, so that we can have a great number of great case studies to present to you and have you solve them during this class, because that's what this course is for. Problem solving and using DNA to solve genealogical problems. Also, Excel spreadsheets Interesting, interesting, interesting. One of the survey questions was about Excel spreadsheets. Do you know how to use Microsoft Excel and or other spreadsheet programs? So one person said yes, and I use it for genetic genealogy regularly. But 6 people said no, they don't use it for genetic genealogy. They do know how to use Excel, but they don't use it for genetic genealogy. And then 4 people said no, they don't know Microsoft Excel or spreadsheet programs at all. Before you arrive in Fort Wayne, I highly recommend, if you don't know spreadsheets, if you don't know Microsoft Excel, get on YouTube and watch one of the tutorials that have already been developed for instructing people on how to use Microsoft Excel. Now, the type of work that we're doing with Excel really just revolves around sorting and filtering. So you don't need to know how to do pivot tables and macros. You just need to know the basics. So don't be afraid. Okay. Next, if you have not done so already, you want to upload your autosomal DNA data file from either Ancestry DNA or 23andMe or Family Tree DNA's Family Finder to gedmatch.com. Hopefully, you have already done this, but if you haven't, you still have time. I would also recommend that you upload, if you didn't test with Ancestry, if you didn't test with Family Tree DNA's Family Finder, that you upload your raw DNA data to Family Finder as well. Now, also, this is really quite important. You want to assess your proficiency with using the various DNA test sites. So if you've tested with 23andMe back in 2014, but you haven't looked at your results since then, now is a good time to log in and learn how to use the site. Why? Because the site was different in 2014. And the same can be said for the Family Tree DNA site, and to a lesser degree, the Ancestry DNA site. So if you haven't logged in a while, now is the time to do so and learn all the ins and outs of the websites. We will go over some of this in the course, but it is expected that everyone comes knowing the basics of how to utilize the various DNA websites. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Well, at least 2 of the sites, you can download your aggregate DNA matches. And if you haven't done that, that might be a chance for you to sort those DNA matches by the number of centimorgans. And I know we're going to talk more about this, but just download all of your matches, especially from Family Tree DNA and 23andMe.
I think that's a good suggestion, just so you have something to play around with, that you're not going to potentially, burn the house down.
Right.
You're not going to like take the light and just it just goes up. I think that's a great suggestion. Definitely with those two websites, and then of course, you can download matches, but you have to have the third-party tool for Ancestry DNA in order to do that. So yeah. I don't have anything to add. I think what you must do beforehand is we outlined that pretty well.
Yes, and you mentioned the third-party app for Ancestry DNA. And if you want to be ahead of the game, as they say, I would recommend installing that tool as well. It is called the Ancestry DNA Helper. And you can get that as a Google Chrome extension. So everyone who is using Google Chrome as a web browser, just go to the Chrome extension store and install the extension. Now, it doesn't cost anything to install the extension. And anyone who's not using the Google Chrome web browser, wake up and install that too, because we're going to use it during the course. And I consider it a life skill to know how to use a Google Chrome web browser. The Microsoft Explorer is out. It's over. It's done. And Safari as well, just Safari. You want to have Chrome under your belt. And also, I know this may sound very basic, but if you don't know how to copy and paste, that's another life skill that you might want to acquire before you land in Fort Wayne.
Okay. So we want to hear from you.
Yes.
We want to hear your questions.
Any questions you may have. They've been the chat rooms, actually, they've been asking some questions. Eileen's been she's been filling in. She just asked, she said, I'm familiar with Ancestry DNA. She's a novice. She says, but I have not figured out if you can download the matches into Excel spreadsheet. Is there a way? And I just told her, yes, there is, with the Ancestry DNA Helper Chrome extension that Shannon just talked about. Another question she had was, I know Excel, but do not know how to use it for genealogy, but I will learn, right? And I said, yes, to some extent you will. Don't worry, though. Those are the only questions that I've seen so far that have come from the chat room.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. So I have a case study, but however, it's not my family line. It's it's a cousin's. It's like my cousin, but like I'm adopted. So I was my cousin passed away recently, and I have all his DNA information. You know, I have his account, and I really wanted to work on that. So can I use that for a case study?
Yeah, it's anybody. Yeah, it's anybody that you. Yeah, it's whoever you want to focus on. This is who you want to hone in on. I mean, there may be somebody that says, "Oh, well, all my matches, I know exactly where they come from," but this other line of the family, I don't know that. So it's fine. I mean, the whole point of the case study is to get you focused on one thing, versus you get in there, you're thinking about 72 things, and you don't know where to start and how to implement any of this information that we're teaching you.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Yes, but one of the issues I am going to raise when it comes to ethics and whose responsibility. Excuse me, I have a child asking me something. I'm gonna Google. No,
I thought it was gonna be Chandler. I thought the whole time it was gonna be Chandler, but it's Annika.
So this is Annika. Okay. Can you all see her?
Hi,
I see her hair.
Okay,
Hi,
good.
Annika.
Nah, bye.
There's a couple questions in the chat room too.
Okay, but it also, when it comes to what you can do with kids that you're managing, and do you have permission to publicly discuss that particular case? It's just something for us to talk about. We will be talking about it, because sometimes you don't have permission. I mean, I'm managing some kids of which I do not have permission to share any information publicly, and therefore I can't do it. I would love to, but I can't. And so this is something you need to think about, Yvette.
Okay, thanks.
There's a couple questions from the chat room. Daphne Kennedy Johnson asked, will the Institute strictly cover autosomal DNA, or will there be any discussion of X DNA? And my initial question is absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. Which X DNA is, I mean, in this case, if you take an autosomal test, unless you've done the mitochondrial test, we're going to be, you know, talking about the X DNA. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is your 23rd chromosome.
Yes, yes. And so that's another thing that you might want to add to your list, is that you might want to go to the Genetic Genealogist blog and download one of the X chromosome charts,
Right,
and fill it in and bring it with you to Fort Wayne, so that if you are dealing with an X chromosome issue, you are equipped with the information in a specific format that will make it very simple for you to use this information.
and there is a chapter in here on your X chromosome, so you may want to review that chapter about the X chromosome.
Yes, yes, we will cover that on the final exam.
There was a chart that I saw earlier that was based off of Blaine's fan chart. It was actually fits on a letter size paper. I can send that out. I literally just looked at that today and downloaded it today. Okay, and then the second question was, the case studies do not need to be DNA specific. I'm not quite sure what she means by that.
It should be something that you can investigate with DNA. So it shouldn't be something that's beyond the scope of DNA testing at this time. So if we're talking about any sort of exhumation, that's not a good case study.
You know, it would be interesting if some of you had an adoption case study, and you knew your DNA, you knew your genealogy, but your adoptee did not. And you figured out how that person was related to you because of your knowledge of the genealogy. And I may even give you an example of how I figured out the parents of an adoptee based upon my knowledge of my genealogy and how I connected the dots, just to give you an idea of how you can do that.
Yes, if you want to submit a case study for something that you think you have already solved, that can be useful as well, in the sense that we can walk through the steps of how you solved it, or how you think you solved it, and use that as a device for the rest of the class to understand how best to go through the process. So that's just another thing to keep in mind as well.
Okay. Just getting these links ready for everyone. Let's see. She says, okay, so Eileen says, I have a genealogy case study, but I don't know if or how I can figure it out with DNA. You can figure it out during DNA using DNA. I think that's the point, is that you can figure it out. Michael Henderson said, is there a standardized template that you can send out for the case study? I think the answer to his question is he just needs to fill out the spreadsheet, correct, that has that asks for the information on it. And just to answer Eileen's question, and of course, let me know if I'm wrong with this, but she says, I have a genealogy case study, but I don't know if or how I can figure it out with DNA. And the answer is yes, you can figure it out using DNA, and we're going to show you how. So if you don't, you can just tell us which tests you've taken. You can tell us, what genealogy research you've done. And then at that point, then we'll help you create a project in order to address that or answer that particular research question.
Right.
Yes, and also if you have concerns about one case study, feel free to submit more than one. Because I don't think it will be possible to use every single case study that's submitted, but giving us more to work with is better.
Right. And also, you know, one of the things that we put on the agenda, we wanted to hear your expectations. And so if you could just throw out to us, well, this is what I expect to happen as a result of my participation in the DNA track, just tell us so that we can make sure that what we have put together will meet your needs. If we need to make some adjustments, it would be good for us to know now. So those of you who are in the chat room, if you want to just throw out, this is what I want to be able to do after I have taken this DNA track, tell us.
And don't be afraid to be bold. You know, you may or may not get what you're looking for, but I mean, there doesn't have to be bold. In my opinion, it doesn't hurt to be bold. I'm also going to make sure that I recirculate the link to the survey, to the case studies survey. I'm airdropping it to myself so that I can put it into the chat.
Okay, we don't have any more questions.
Well, do we?
I see one, but go ahead, Yvette.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I came in late. Did we discuss what a case study looks like? You know, what that all includes. You know, so that I have something to bring forward when I turn that in.
Yeah, I just got the link. I shared it with the people in the chat room, but I'm also going to email it back out to everyone this evening as well, along with the links to Blaine's two charts and the ex-DNA inheritance chart that I referenced earlier. I'll make sure it is in bold.
Okay, thank you.
With the chat room, Cheryl says, she says, I wrote up my case study, but don't think I filled in a spreadsheet. If you filled out the actual survey form, it went into a spreadsheet. So that's where it ends up going. Eileen says, I would like to leave the session with a I can't say it. Methodological plan for directing my research when I get home. Cheryl says, I want to be able to assign ancestors to shared DNA.
Wonderful. We will discuss that in depth.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes.
We sure do. Just so you all know, I was going to say, just so you all know, the case study, it's not like we asked you 75 questions. It literally is 2 questions. That's it. And it tells you exactly what to say.
Okay, just remember to drop me a note to let me know if you will participate in the Soul Food luncheon on Wednesday. And also if you will be in Fort Wayne early enough on Monday to go to the African American Museum, of which we're trying to set it up right now. Expect an email that will give you additional details about registration when you arrive, and I'll meet and greet on Monday evening. And we look forward to seeing all of you.
Yes, I got one last person. Diane Sheldon says, I would like to further my paternal family line, which is very limited by using my DNA with shared relatives. And Eileen chimes in that she really appreciates this session. It's been very helpful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right.
Okay, everyone. We look forward to seeing you on Monday, July 10th for registration and the meet and greet. It's always a fun group. We have fun at MAAGI, folks.
We do.
Yes.
We have a great time.
Wonderful bonding opportunities for all of us African American researchers.
Yes, 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 yes. I agree. All right, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.